Hey everybody, how are you? This is Collin Daniels. Thanks for tuning in to my video blog. This is part 3 of my incredible video blog series called How to Make a Record in 2 Days, which is about the making of my record Just Keep Going. If you have not read part 1, which is a text version on my blog, or seen part 2, which is a video blog, I would recommend you do that. You don't have to. But I think this will make more sense. I'm going to try not to repeat myself. So, we left the story right before the weekend that we're going to record Just Keep Going. I have 2 days reserved in the studio with my co-producer and engineer, Ian Love, who is amazing and who I love. Not just because his last name is Love. And so we're going to record all day Saturday, all day Sunday, 2 10-hour days. I have all my musicians lined up. It's a pretty crazy schedule, but I've got it all mapped out. And Thursday night, unbeknownst to me, so we're going to record on Saturday. Thursday night, so 2 days before. Not even, because we're talking night. Thursday night. Sasha Heinzman, who very generously agreed to play bass for me on 3 of the songs, and who had learned all the parts. I'd sent her the rough recordings and the music and all that. And she had practiced them and was ready to come in and record them. Thursday night in Manhattan, we have a crazy rainstorm. Which, it was this freak thing where it was like sunny at, 5 minutes of 5 at night, and then the clouds rolled in, and before anybody knew it, it was raining. I was going to say cats and dogs, but that's inaccurate. It was not cats and dogs, it was just a lot of water in a very short period of time. And if you don't live in New York City, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but rain is a real, maybe it's not a problem, but it's like a downer. Not just because it's gray and wet, but it's because most of us in New York City don't have cars and don't drive around. We take the subway, which is dry when it rains because it's underground. The ground above the subway stops the rain. But even if you take the subway, you have to walk all over the place. Maybe it's 2 blocks here, 3 blocks here, 7 blocks there, but you have to walk. If you're going to do anything in Manhattan during the day, you have to walk. So if it's raining, you're going to get wet. And here's why. Because if you don't live in New York City, you might say, Collin, why don't you just use an umbrella? And I could not begin, it would take a 20-minute video to talk about the chaos and insanity of the umbrella situation in Manhattan on a day that it rains. Suffice to say that when it rains, it almost always is, we almost always have a wind that is blowing at like 45 miles an hour. So any sort of light transportable umbrella that you would probably need because you're going to be walking around all day, you don't want to carry a big, 10-foot long, 50-pound umbrella, right, is useless because it usually gets blown apart in the first 30 seconds of you using it. The other thing is, if you do have the 10-foot long umbrella, which many people do, you're in this crazy science fiction horror movie kind of situation where everybody who has an umbrella, because there's millions of people in New York City, everybody's walking around, there's like this umbrella war where you have to like dodge, like you've got 50 people coming at you, all with differently sized umbrellas at different heights, and with the little metal pointy things that can like poke your eye out. So you're trying not to hit anybody else, and you're trying to avoid getting hit by other people's umbrellas. And at a certain point, you get into kind of like a homicidal rage kind of thing because you're so frustrated with the whole process that then you kind of want to like take somebody's eye out with your umbrella, and maybe you start, elbowing into somebody with your umbrella, and then you think to yourself like, wait, I'm a good person. I know it's New York City, but I don't want to kill anybody, or I certainly don't want to take anybody's eye out. So it's just a disaster. So you either have the cheap light umbrella and it's broken in the first 30 seconds, or you have the 10-foot umbrella and you're fighting the umbrella war, or if you're like me, after a few years of trying both of those things and just feeling like it was totally useless anyway, you're just getting wet. You're just soaked. All your clothes, your hair, everything, you're just wet. You get to the place where you're going to go, and you're wet. Then that's it. So Thursday night, we have this freak rainstorm. And again, unbeknownst to me, Sasha Heinzman, who's going to play bass for me, wonderful woman, a friend of mine for many years and a great bass player, is caught in this storm while she's out shopping. She tries to run under an awning of a convenience store, or as we call it in NYC, a bodega. And in her attempt to run underneath the awning, to have the protection of it, to keep her from getting completely soaked, she slips, lands on her right hand, and breaks her right wrist. Yeah. So really, if you're a bass player, both your hands are very important, but the right one is like really important because that's the one you pluck with. You know, that's the one where you move the strings that makes the sound. Yeah, very important. Anyway, so Seisha, being the wonderful person that she was and still is, got home and was not only in pain and, you know, going through whatever personal trauma she was about having broken her wrist, but she was also thinking, oh my God, I've got to play bass on Collin's record this weekend. It's less than 2 days away. What am I going to do? So she sits down and tries to play bass. She can't because her hand, the fingers won't move, and she's in total pain when she moves any of them, like even a little bit. So it doesn't work. So she goes to bed and says, well, I'll maybe it'll just all be fine in the morning. You know, it'll just magically heal overnight, or maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. I'll try to play bass in the morning and see if that'll work. So she goes to bed. I don't know how well she slept, because if I had a broken wrist, I wouldn't, you know, sleep very well. But she wakes up the next morning, does her best, as she would, to try to play bass. And it's a no-go. This is not happening. Seisha Heinzman, let's be clear, is not playing bass for my record or in any way whatsoever on this weekend that we are now. It's Friday morning. We're less than 24 hours away from laying down tracks for my record.